I'm Laura Keil. Today I'll be interviewing the three candidates in the upcoming provincial election in the riding of Prince George-Valemount. Today, with me in the gathering tree is Shirley Ogasawara. Welcome, Shirley.
Hi, Laura.
My first question to you is, what employment creation initiatives does your party propose to help the Robson Valley, which is in transition from the loss of forestry jobs?
Absolutely, that's a really important question, particularly to this area. And one of the things that I think that I'm very impressed with and quite excited about is that Adrian announced on last Monday that we were putting forward a very strong plank in our platform that makes it a priority towards revitalizing forestry. So we're specifically looking at how we can look at forest health, forest management, as well as looking at raw log exports and looking at what we can do to curb those, and perhaps look at opportunities where we could put a little bit more value added into that specific sector. And of course, there's opportunities here in Valemount that pertain to resource and tourism developments, and so that would also entail some job creation opportunities. The biggest thing as well, I think, is just maintaining the focus on sustainable, good paying jobs. The other focus too is on skills training and skilling up the labor force and offering young people the opportunity to acquire those skills that we know that are going to be needed for those jobs of the future.
Absolutely. Now, small business is important to the economy, especially in the Robson Valley. What is your party's strategy for supporting small business?
Great question again, because that's really something that the New Democrats are very much committed to, is supporting small business. And so one of the things, there's been some talk of taxes being increased, particularly around corporate taxes and business taxes, and I think people will be really happy to know that that doesn't impact small business at all. And neither does it impact between small businesses locally, neither does it impact credit unions, which are also really connected to communities. So those are things that we don't want to impact with any additional tax. That being said, however, again, small business and the focus is promoting local. So way back, back many years ago, there was a program called Buy BC. And Buy BC was something that was hugely successful because it really gave people an awareness of the importance of buying local. Particularly, it was focused on fruits and vegetables. And so one of the proposals that the New Democrats have put forward is that we really want to expand that beyond just fruits and vegetables, but look at other goods and services and have folks, you know, having that as a priority. But even more so than individuals, we want to look at government, and government making that a priority. So we can use government's buying power to be able to support local economies. Because the thing about local is that if we spend $1 locally, so whether it's here in Valemount, or if we think of local as a little bit more regional, like the northern region, or even expanding that to the entire province, that dollar spent locally is going to have an exponential multiplication factor of about $5 to $6 in value. And so that money we can then take and put back into the infrastructure and be able to support providing services and, you know, those other things that are really important to communities and really help to, that'll help to revitalize economies. So I mean, it's a three-part program, and it's first of all, it's Buy BC, Feed BC, and Grow BC. So we have a focus on buying BC, local first. Grow BC, or Feed BC, pardon me, is really focusing on the government buying power. One of the big priorities, it's an example, is hospitals and institutions, facilities who have patients and who have people who are residents over long term. We want to make sure that they're being able to access real food, so good local foods, and that's going to be a priority in what's going to appear on menus in facilities and hospitals across the province. So I'm really happy to say that, because I mean, here in the Robson Valley, we've got some great fertile growing area and great potential for agriculture. And when you think about that, that's really going to push that market demand right, as well, so that we have support for people that are in the agricultural sector. And then that's the other aspect of that. Grow BC is looking at food producers and supporting them, because agriculture is becoming a lost art, and that's really unfortunate. I myself come from the Okanagan, where we had, I grew up in an orchard and we grew vegetables and fruits, and they went to market. I was really proud of the work that my family did, and it's unfortunate to see that that's becoming something that's lost with this next generation. So those are the things we want to do to revitalize not only economies, but offer people potential to maybe exploring that as a job opportunity.
Absolutely, yeah. Now, what is your party's position on the Valemount Glacier Destinations Resort proposal for a year-round skiing and sightseeing resort?
Well, we're really encouraged and actually pretty impressed by the fact that this is an initiative that I think has tremendous community support, which is I think one of the pillars of looking at something and saying, okay, well, do the local people support this? Has it gone through a consultation process? And my understanding is that it has. It's gone through several steps in the process. I've also been involved with speaking with the developer out of Vancouver, who shared plans about this gosh, probably about a year and a half ago we sat down initially, and we've maintained contact since. So I've been watching kind of on the sidelines as this has slowly been, coming to fruition, and I'm very, very pleased to see the point that it's at now. And certainly going back to caucus, taking this back and talking to our critic, who also is involved with the tourism portfolio, and Adrian Dix, our leader as well. We have a firm commitment, or we have a strong commitment towards this, and we're anxious to see the next steps in the proposal. The actual business plan as it's laid out, looking at the technological and environmental implications that it might have, and really exploring that through the entire assessment process as it moves forward. But we definitely are in full support of community and economic initiatives, and like I said, it's something that is quite unique and really looks at what Valemount, the Robson Valley, and Valemount itself has to offer. I think that's so exciting as a resort destination. There are some challenges as well. I think that I've had shared with me by folks within. I've been to Valemount a few times, and so some people have identified some challenges. Again, taking the message back to caucus and putting that on their agenda, because these are things that, along with folks in the community are really the experts, right? It's not us that people that are in Victoria or people that are in other parts of the region. It's really people here that know exactly what needs to be done. So I think it's really important that any government needs to listen to the community, really connect with the people that are the community advocates that really understand whatever the proposal might be, and then collaboratively work towards solution. And so, that's what we're looking forward to.
You may be aware a Calgary-based company is exploring a geothermal power plant south of Valemount. How would your party support the development of geothermal plants in BC, seeing as there aren't any currently?
Well, again, this is another really good example of something like we've just talked about with the destination Glacier tourism project proposal. And something like geothermal energy is an example of a clean, sustainable type of energy. These are things I think that, again, need to be explored. We certainly support clean energy. We certainly support initiatives that are community initiatives like this. And again, looking at going back to, not sure if people are aware, but a lot of the process around this has been taken away by the Liberal government, away from the BC Utilities Commission. So we want to put that back in place so they can have a strong, a strong part to play in this and analyze, again, whether there's the need for power, what that process looks like, and have everybody be involved. It's a consultative sort of process. But that being said, one of the parts of our platform is looking at carbon tax credits and where those have gone, because the Pacific Carbon Trust hasn't worked out well for particularly northern British Columbians. It's almost been punitive. People have a need. I'd say it's something that's a reality of living in the north. You have to drive a vehicle to get from point A to point B and get things done, and those vehicles depend on fossil fuels. I mean, there are alternatives, but they don't function as well in colder climates, so that's a reality. We live in homes, and we're, again, north, so we spend a lot of time living in an environment that is pretty cold, and so we have to heat our homes with fossil fuels as well. So we tend to pay a disproportionate amount into the carbon tax, and that particular Pacific Carbon Tax, the trust fund, the revenues ended up going into a general pool, and ended up not being used for what I think the taxpayers of British Columbia, the folks that live north would have intended, or would have liked to have seen it be used for. And some of the revenues went to actually support corporations who are the biggest carbon emitters, and that's unfortunate. So we want to put forward a proposal where we're going to take and dismantle the Pacific Carbon Trust as it exists today, and recycle it and make it into something where we have a sustainable climate secretariat, or something, a commission that looks after that, and supports using those carbon tax revenues towards projects and initiatives that support climate change, supporting green infrastructure within communities, and looking again at this whole regional transit picture that is problematic. And so I think one of those things, like the geothermal project that Valemount has as potential, has also some good potential to fit in under being a recipient of some of those carbon tax revenues. It's still a little bit early to make any firm commitment, but I think that there's definite potential there, and it's something to be excited and hopeful about as well.
Mm-hmm. Great. We probably just have time for one more question.
Oh, okay.
Now, how will the NDP address the crunch at rural schools like those found in the Robson Valley?
Yes, I've been in touch, actually meeting with the superintendent of school districts, and specifically asked the question about the Valemount Secondary School, because that's a new school. It's not filled to capacity, as we know, and what was reassuring to me is that the superintendent at the school district level, there are no plans to change any of the way that service delivery of education is happening out here in the Robson Valley, particularly in Valemount and other rural schools within this school district. And that's good news. And going back to that history, I mean, we saw back through this last 12 years, I mean, the Liberals cut funding to education, and in fact that resulted in 190 school closures, and those school closures were mostly in rural communities. So I understand the fear, I think, that communities, especially like Valemount, have around that. One of the things that we're proposing is taking some of the revenue that we've put together, a fiscal platform that we released in early April. So it's costed all of these commitments out, and people can go to the website and take a look at it. It's there in full detail. But we're committing $100 million towards supporting schools and supporting education, and rural schools would be a recipient of that funding. So we have a commitment towards hiring more teachers, making sure we've got librarians in place, because that's such an important part. Libraries are such an important part, a component of schools. Making sure that we've got special needs in place, because that's what we're seeing. We're seeing a lot more students who are vulnerable in rural communities, whether it's rural communities or urban communities. I mean, those percentages seem to be on the rise. So, and we need to have those supports in place for students to get the education that are going to help them to get the good jobs of the future.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Laura.
With me now is Shirley Bond. Hi, Shirley.
Hi, Laura.
What employment creation initiatives does your party propose to help the Robson Valley, which is in transition from the loss of forestry jobs?
Well, certainly I don't think anyone can argue with the fact that the downturn in the forest economy was really difficult for this part of the province. So one of the things that I think all of us recognize is we have enormous tourism potential. And we've had a number of opportunities over the last certainly 10 years, 12 years that I've been an MLA. But I think for the first time we're on the verge of a realistic opportunity in tourism with Glacier Mountain and the development possibilities there. But I also think that there's the opportunity for us to look at the community forest and how we expand, and that the potential for expansion exists. And so a new way to look at forestry potential in the valley as well. Lots of great opportunities, but much of that centered on tourism. And we certainly know the sledding industry, heli-skiing, beautiful part of British Columbia, and I think together we have to do the best we can to remind the rest of the world where Valemount is, where the Robson Valley is, and find ways to capitalize. And I think a partnership with Oberti is certainly going to be one of the potential opportunities. A major step in the right direction. We still have some work to do on that proposal, but I'm cautiously optimistic that it would make a big difference for the Robson Valley.
Small business is important to the economy in Valemount as well as the rest of the Robson Valley. What is your party's strategy for supporting small businesses?
Well, certainly we know that small business is the economic driver of British Columbia, and the vast majority of businesses in our province are actually considered to be small if they have a relatively small number of employees. You know, obviously it's very tough actually to drive through Valemount and look at some of the stores that have closed, and that's pretty discouraging, not just for the people who live here, but for the MLA who represents the area. So again, I think we have to look at diversifying the economy. When there are job opportunities, then we see small businesses thrive. But generally speaking, our party believes that by looking at regulation, for example, we've been a leader in the country in terms of deregulation, not when it comes to health and safety issues, but small businesses are often strangled by regulation. So we have to preserve those regulations that are important, but get rid of those things that are barriers to small business. We also have to have a competitive tax regime, and we've worked very hard to reduce the tax rates on small businesses in this province. We're going to continue to do that. And we're also going to look at things like personal income tax and how that helps a small business as well. So, you know, we're a party that wants to make sure that we have a low tax regime, that we get rid of additional regulations, maintaining those ones that are critical for health and safety. But those are the key barriers to small business. Interestingly, many women are entrepreneurs, and in fact, a large number of small businesses in British Columbia are led by women. We have more women in the workforce than ever in the history of our province. So again, we need to support women who want to be in business. And you know, the way you do that is make sure they have opportunities to be able to afford childcare, the kinds of training that they need. So, you know, we've had a pretty aggressive small business agenda, and we're going to continue to look at ways to support what businesses that are the heart of this province.
Now, you've already touched on this, but what is the Liberal Party's position on the Valemount Glacier Destinations resort that's being proposed for the Premier Range here?
Well, I'm very supportive, and in fact have already worked very hard with the minister responsible in government to move this project through its first stages. I think that we need to capitalize in a responsible way on the asset that we have here in the valley, and that is the spectacular mountain range that we have. So, and also I have worked with Oberto before, and I'm very supportive. He has created world-class resorts around the world, and I think it's fantastic that he's excited about Valemount. But it needs to be done responsibly and appropriately. I think one of the key factors here is that there's so much community support. There seems to be a very general consensus that this is a project people would like to see move forward. So I'm excited about it, have been busy working behind the scenes to make sure that in Victoria, people first of all know about the project and that we can move it forward through an appropriate approval process.
A Calgary-based company is exploring a geothermal power plant south of Valemount. How would the Liberal Party support the development of geothermal power plants in BC?
Well, we've actually been a leader, in fact, on the green energy agenda, making sure that we have clean, green power available in British Columbia. And we've worked very hard to develop alternative power sources. Obviously, I've been a supporter of independent power production, including run-of-the-river when it's done appropriately. And I feel similarly about geothermal. We've had some initial discussions about the proposal in government. And one of the things I like very much about the proposal, it's got a very small footprint when you're dealing with geothermal power, small footprint, job creation, all of those things that are important to the valley. So I think there is certainly an interest in pursuing it. I think you have to look at the business case, look at the impacts on the community, do it in consultation with people who live here. But certainly we've been big supporters of alternative forms of energy. You know, we're interested in looking at things like bioenergy. All of those are appropriate. And British Columbia is going to need that power, particularly if we see the kind of industrial development that we expect may take place over the next number of years. So supportive, there's more work to be done, and I certainly believe in doing it in consultation with the people who live here. Ultimately, they need to have a say about the importance of that project.
Okay. Now, how will your party address the crunch at rural schools like those found in the Robson Valley?
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, I was, previous to being elected provincially, I was a locally elected school trustee and actually was the liaison trustee for the Robson Valley. So I've had a long history trying to understand, first of all, the importance of rural schools. We all know that schools are the heart of a community, and it's very difficult when you're seeing school closures. So I've been a strong advocate for the importance of educational opportunities in even those small rural communities. I was a big supporter of the Dunster School of Fine Arts when I was a school trustee. I think that that kind of innovation is one way that we help to preserve local schools. Recently worked very hard with the parents at Giscombe to ensure that their school was rebuilt, and we're very proud of that. There will be a modular two-room school built with about 24 or 5 children in it. So I think we have to work very hard to find creative ways to support rural education. We have added additional funding in the school funding formula to try to support those communities where there's a dwindling population. So it's a pretty critical issue for me, obviously, and I understand the concerns. You know, if you have a rural school and a declining population, you're constantly worried about losing that school. The other principle that's important for me is I don't want to see children having to be on buses for long periods of time. And that's one of the things that motivated me with Giscombe Elementary. It meant that children would be on buses for literally hours during the daytime and when they're on their way home. So I don't think that's an optimal way for children to receive their education. So tough decisions though. We have declining population in British Columbia, and yes, schools did close, but population dropped dramatically across our province. And I think that in larger urban centers, you can rationalize some of the movement of students because schools are closer together. But in rural British Columbia, I think we have a unique situation, and we need to work hard to preserve and expand opportunities for kids that are closer to home.
Is there anything else you'd like to add?
Well, you know, one of the things that I'm most proud of, I have loved being the representative for Prince George-Valemount, and the people here, you know, we've seen some very challenging times over the past 12 years, and we haven't figured out how to solve all of those problems yet. But I'm optimistic. We have an economic pilot project that is underway along this corridor as we try to sort out what are the priorities, how can we invest in ways that support economic redevelopment here in the valley. And from my perspective, you know, I think it's a fantastic place to be able to raise your children and to live. I just want to make sure that there are as many services as possible provided as close to home as possible. So it's been an absolute honor, and I think together we've done some good things. We've, provided seniors housing for people who want to stay here in this community. Wouldn't have been possible without some creativity and partnership. We've looked at an expanded community forest. There's a lot of things we've done. I don't think we're finished yet, and I certainly hope that as residents go out to vote, that they'll think very seriously about the future of British Columbia and the very special role that Valemount and the Robson Valley have to play in the future. So it's been an honor and a privilege, and I'm certainly hoping I get the chance to continue to work hard on behalf of Valemount and the Robson Valley.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. It's been a pleasure.
With me now is Nathan Giede with the BC Conservative Party. Hi, Nathan.
Hello.
What employment creation initiatives does your party propose to help the Robson Valley, which is in transition from a loss of forestry jobs?
It appears that in the Robson Valley, there's two kind of big movers. The biggest one is definitely tourism. People want to see more snowmobilers. People want to see more all-terrain vehicles coming in and enjoying the trails. And of course, people want to see backcountry skiing and hiking, things like that. The other thing is that we as the BC Conservative Party want to reinvest in skills and trades training, and that can happen here at the local campus. So the BC Conservatives have put forward planks that make tourism and reinvesting in trades a serious priority. This investment will help people upgrade while also helping the industries they'll eventually work in, either as maintenance or even as staff. That will help them to market and bring their things to the global marketplace.
Okay. Now, small business is very important to the economy, including in the Robson Valley. What is your party's strategy for supporting small businesses?
Small business is the building block of British Columbia. It's the most important thing in British Columbia, for sure. And the most important thing to every small business, and to every big business for that matter, is their bottom line. The carbon tax has to go. We see this as probably the single greatest frustration to the average consumer and the average business person, whether they're part of a medium-sized business or they're just self-employed as a contractor. The carbon tax cuts into their transportation. It cuts into their services. Every single dollar that they have to spend on the carbon tax gets passed on to their consumers, and business goes down. First day in government, we're taking out the carbon tax. That's a promise.
Okay. Now, what is your party's position on the Valemount Glacier Destinations Resort proposal, which is a year-round skiing and sightseeing resort?
Well, there's two parts to that. Again, we're going to go back to the idea of infrastructure as well as tourism. Tourism is the end product, and we want more people to come up here and to be spending their dollars in Valemount and, by association, McBride, the entire Robson Valley, absolutely. And so, when it comes to tourism, we're actually putting forward a plank, and it's actually being announced very soon, of over $10 million towards marketing. $10 million and more towards branding, making sure you can get your product out there. Maybe it's local signage, maybe it's help learning how the web works so you can put up that website. That's really important. The other side is the $200 million for infrastructure that we've already announced. That infrastructure is specifically for the north. It is not for south of Hope. It is for north of Hope. It's not for twinning bridges and highways down south. It's for making sure that people in northern British Columbia, which have a lot of wear and tear on their roads from trucks and everything else, have the infrastructure they need to get to the places they need to go. That's one of those places. All tourism is one of those places. And so we're going to reinvest in those roads that help people get to where they're going, and tourism will be the end result.
Okay. Now, you may be aware a Calgary-based company is exploring a geothermal power plant south of Valemount. How would your party support the development of geothermal power in BC?
We're going to go back to infrastructure, and we're going to go back to the idea of trades. Both of those investments are going to help this happen. The geothermal plant is actually something that I just heard about from you right here. But using the principles of our party, I don't need to text home base and ask them to give me a talking point about this. I can tell you right here, right now, that because we're reinvesting in skills training, because we're reinvesting in apprenticeships, and we want to encourage masters of carpentry, masters of welding, etc., to open up their arms, because we'll be helping fund those students to get back and get those get those jobs, get those skills, that will be of a huge help to the geothermal plant. They're going to need local workers. It's going to create local jobs, and they'll need the skills to get there. The infrastructure is the roads to get there. We need to build them, obviously. We need to make sure that trucks aren't getting bogged down in the mud in between a geothermal plant and home base. And so the idea, of course, would be to help fund that, to shore up the coffers here in Valemount, to partner with local communities, not by raising their property taxes, that's a civil issue, but instead of a local community having to raise its property taxes, we, the BC Conservatives, believe that raising taxes is not an option. So we're going to find efficiencies in government, get that $200 million that is just being wasted right now by the current Liberal government, and put it towards infrastructure in the north.
Now, how is your party, or how will your party address the crunch at rural schools like the ones found in the Robson Valley?
That's an excellent question. And our leader, John Cummins, just came out with a plank about that today. He called it a sustainability fund. Every year, every single year, schools, even in urban ridings and in urban areas, suffer from not knowing what amount of money they're going to be getting. You see, schools are not allowed to run deficits, unlike the current government. They can't spend more than they have, but they never know how much money they're going to have. So they have to bank. They have to make a guess out of thin air. And John, as a former educator and as has his master's in stats, he knows that that doesn't work. He knows that numbers have to be on the table so that someone can take their pen and go, this is what we can do, this is what we can't do. And instead of that being politicking in Victoria, what we're going to be looking at is bringing that back to the local level. Teachers, parents, and students need to meet on that local level. They need to discuss curricula, they need to discuss objectives that are achievable in this area that benefit this area. We don't all need to look at the exact same curricula across the province. Obviously, there are essentials. Reading, writing, arithmetic, those will always be there. But it's very important for every part of the province to look at the issues in their area, come down on that in a local way, and figure out what best suits them for their students and for their future so they can be prosperous.
Okay. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
I would like to add that the BC Conservative Party is the only party running in this election, the only party running in this election that is promising no tax increases. We're going to roll back the carbon tax. We are going to move forward on finding efficiencies in government in order to pay for those new roads we're talking about. And we're going to partner with people at the local level by having an open door policy, by being accountable to the people, and letting people know that we want to meet with them and hear their ideas right here in town. How can we improve things right here? This doesn't have to go all the way to Victoria. And we've seen a lot of politicking in Victoria over the years between big groups fighting each other, speaking past each other, instead of going back to the people they're supposed to serve, as we can see with the current Liberal government. We as the BC Conservative Party are proposing a different way of governing, of government by the people, of the people, and for the people.
Thank you very much. My guests today were NDP candidate Sherry Ogasawara, Liberal candidate Shirley Bond, and Conservative candidate Nathan Giede. Thanks for joining us.